stream going? How is it going? I am Marcus. I am Devra working at Edge and Node. And Etienne from Pinax is here today. We're going to be hopping in and going into Token API right now, which is pretty dang cool. So let's go ahead and get this all spun up. In the meantime, how are you doing today, Etienne? Welcome to Graph Builders Office Hours. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. I've watched a few office hours before, and now I'm here presenting, so that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we're just getting the chat pulled together right now. How's it going, chat? Lewis, how you doing? Albert, how you doing? Dom, how's it going? Sassy Chick, how's it going? Welcome, 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 welcome to Graph Builders Office Hours. And shout out to Jana, who is helping out. Unfortunately, we're having some difficulty with the live stream this morning. I've never seen Riverside have issues with Twitter before. And this morning, I'm trying to get it all put together, and there's no, just literally like a 404. Can't do Twitter today. So maybe Twitter changed their endpoint or something like that, and Riverside is scrambling. But we'll just hang out here for a little bit while people are streaming in. For people just coming in right now, Etienne, what's your background with the graph and kind of building in this ecosystem? How'd you get started? Were you in the Discord all the time, or were you outside looking in? How was your interaction with the graph before joining?
Yeah, so it's actually fairly recent. I've been working for Pinax for like 3 years now,
Mm,
but I've mostly been working on internal stuff. And it's been since like the last year or so, I would say, that we have started working on projects that are closer to the graph ecosystem. And this token API that we built, I think, is a really nice way of offering maybe new data services on the graph. I think the graph is exploring new options.
mm.
So I'm glad to be working on that and yeah, sharing that with the community.
Yeah, it's a really cool product. I used it a little bit. I have a little repository that I put together for education for it, and I'm excited to share with the graph ecosystem essentially what we are going to be doing with this and what hopefully developers out there are going to be doing. So it's an exciting and also easy to use product. So I'm excited to have people learn about it and jump in. With that being said, what I'm going to do is let's get this shared a little bit more to make sure the studio is working, the live stream is working, because naturally that needs to happen. I want to be doubly, triply sure this is actually coming through. And let's see here. Anything else planned for your day, sir?
Sorry?
Anything else planned for your day today?
Oh, for the day, I guess
Yeah.
no, not really. I
This is
mean,
it.
weather in Montreal is still very cold, so I'm not gonna go outside, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in Montreal. That is the difference. There we go.
Yeah.
So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get this live stream all the way put together and have to get this changed, and then we'll go ahead and get you going. So, token API behind the scenes. Okay, got it. We are in it. Okay. And we're on our way. So, what I'll have you do is go ahead and take over the um, presentation if you can. And from there, it is all yours. I'll step off, and the links have been shared. Enjoy, Etienne. We're looking forward to this.
Thank you. All right, screen share should be on. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the behind the scenes of the Token API, how we built it, and what are the features, and one of the two ways of using the Token API. Like there's two main ways we've built this Token API. There's the traditional way with REST API endpoints, but we have also a novelty, which I think is pretty cool. And if you were there, like the last Builder Office Hours, there was the Ponder team that showcased something similar. is using natural languages to query, information, stuff like balances, token transfers, and all of that. We have a component that is actually can do that with the API. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But first, I'm gonna quickly talk about the data pipeline we've used for the token API, which really highlights the strength of the technology we've been using for the last few years, and especially like substreams. The token API is really built on substreams to extract on-chain events. We extract data for ERC20 tokens via logs, storage changes, and if we need to fill missing information, we can do that with RPC calls within the substreams. We try to avoid those as much as possible within the data pipeline because they can be a bit costly. But most of the information we get just from on-chain events that we're parsing with substreams. Then the second component, very important component, is the sync SQL. So substreams allow you to redirect the flow of data basically anywhere you want. So if you want it into a file, if you want it into a certain format, we're using SQL so that all the data that we're getting from these ERC20 tokens and the pricing data, it merges all that data into insert statements that we can use into an external database. So we're using this for backfilling. So the backfilling is going from the recent data all the way back to Genesis. And we're also using this for the live processing of blocks for all the chains we support. And one note here about the live processing is that liveness depends on the chain as well. So we're not live to the second. For most chains, we're mostly maybe live to the minute, or maybe it can be a few minutes, depending on the chains. And that's something I'm actually interested to hear about you guys, because we built this as it's a beta prototype. So we've gone for features that we thought were like the main features of a token API. But this is really going to be built based on your feedback. So if you have a requirement for having liveness is an important part and you need like seconds for the blocks or anything like it, feel free to drop your feedback. Because we have so many ways we can go forward with the token API and we can focus on certain stuff. But the live processing is also something we can focus on, is bringing more live data into the token API. Because as I've said, right now it's a few minutes. It's going to be a few minutes lag for like most of the chains. But then the third component is ClickHouse. So we're using the SQL inserts and we're sending that into ClickHouse, which is a very efficient database solution that we found. We've been tinkering a little bit with the token API a bit before that, before building this one. And we found out that ClickHouse was very, very efficient for high volumes of data. So we're talking about billions of rows and terabytes of data for scale. So when you have to query through all of that, you need a really efficient solution. And with ClickHouse, you can really build optimized indexes for that. And the replication, we're replicating the data across multiple clusters as well in order to be able to handle the query load. So I've made also a little bit of a diagram. If you're more like a visual learner like me, I like to do these sort of diagrams. It's very simple, but it goes from left to right. On the left, we have the EVM chains. So currently we support 6 EVM chains: Ethereum, Mainnet, Optimism, Arbitrum1, Base, BSC, and Polygon. But we could add more EVM chains as we go. Since the stack for EVM, once you decode EVM events, you can decode for any EVM stack chain. So we're parsing ERC20 and Uniswap v2 events from those chains, putting that into substreams. The sync SQL makes the link to ClickHouse. And in ClickHouse, we'll have the data organized into different tables. So each chain would have its own database. And within the database, you have all the same tables. So you have balances, transfer prices, like contracts, information, and more. And what the API does is simply makes SQL statements to the ClickHouse when you make a request to like the balance endpoint or the transfer endpoint and all of that. And you can see the second way of querying here is using an LLM through what's called the MCP. MCP is a new specification. It's basically an interface for large language models to interact with external data sources. Usually LLMs don't have access to the internet or anything like that. MCPs make that bridge, and it's a client-server architecture. I won't go into the details of the MCP here, unless you have questions about it. We can go over it in the questions section. But basically, it's a client-server architecture. We have an MCP server, which provides certain tools that the LLM can use to make queries. So with LLM, you're interacting directly with the SQL database. You make SQL statements. With the API, it's just your traditional REST API endpoints. So this is what I was talking about, the features. You have the familiar REST API endpoints. Your balances, we have current balances. We don't have historical balance lookup. Again, if that's a feature you would like to see, feel free to drop some feedback on that. For transfers, we have historical transfer lookup up to 180 days of data. We have obviously token holders, contract metadata, and also prices. So I would say like the first four here, first four bullet points are sourced from ERC20 events. The last bullet point about the prices and OHLC, which is open, high, low, and close. So it's like candlestick charts. Think about trading data. This data is only sourced from Uniswap v2 right now. We are planning to add more DEX events, and we already have internally, we already have support for like Uniswap v3 and v4, which is going to come in the next iteration of the token API. So I want to say that because we'll see in the demo in a little bit, but when you just have one DEX as a source, it can be a bit wonky. The data can look a bit wonky for pairs that don't have much volume, as we'll see. So the second way of querying is using the MCP, as you can see. So you can directly access the ClickHouse database and tables using an LLM. Natural language for querying information. LLM will translate that to SQL. And again, the little warning here is that it can lead to variable results because, well, first off, not all LLMs are equal. You know, you'll have different performance depending on which large language model you use. And also, LLMs usually need more context. If you're very generic in your query, the LLM might have trouble figuring out exactly, you know, the small details. For example, in our tables, the address is always lowercase. So if you copy paste an address that has, you know, lowercase and uppercase, it might not find any data for it just because it's not in the right format. So that's a few caveats that you need to be aware of. And I'll also showcase in the demo how you can deal with it. You can just be a little bit more specific with your prompts, and that should help the LLM figure out a lot of stuff. So I think without further ado, we're ready for looking at the demos. So maybe Marcus could drop the link to the Grafana dashboard in the chat. This is a public Grafana dashboard that we've built as just a showcase of what's possible just using the traditional REST API endpoints. So you can build like nice dashboard. You can build any app using a REST API like you normally would. So this dashboard is pulling the price, last price. It's pulling also contract information. And it shows you the open, high, low, and close volume as well on the chart here. So this data is sourced from the contract metadata endpoint from the API. This one is sourced from the price endpoint, and this one is the OHLC, you know, endpoint. So I'll repeat the little caveat here about the numbers. This is only looking at Uniswap v2. So the numbers might look different than other providers. And as we add more DEXs, we'll try to get more accurate because every provider has a different way of computing, you know, the market cap or the security supply. Do you take only on-chain data, or do you integrate also other centralized exchanges data? There's a lot of different ways. We're only pulling from Uniswap v2, so I would say take these numbers right now as a good ballpark, but you can take the prices are very accurate. So the price data here would be very accurate here. And I'll just showcase that real quick with our data validation tool as well that we built. So this is interactive. So if I switch to Polygon, it will show me like the wrapped poll. So this is the wrapped native token for the chain. I can change the interval if I go back in time more, like I aggregate by 1 week here. And I can go back in time, for example, for the last year, and we'll update all of these. So you have all the chains here, and you can play around with it. It's a nice little dashboard. And now I'll also showcase the other way of querying data using Token API is using an LLM and an MCP. So yeah, we have documentation for a few LLM clients that you could use. I'm going to showcase here for a Claude desktop how it looks like. So in my Claude desktop, when I connect my MCP, you'll see I have these two buttons that come up. So you can see it says 4 MCP tools available. So an MCP tool is basically a function call that the LLM can do from your server. So you can see from the server here, we have describe table, which describes the schema of the table. It can list the databases available in ClickHouse. It can list the tables available from the database. And it can so run a read-only SQL query. So these are the only 4 tools the LLM can use, but combined together, it should give enough context to the LLM so that it can figure out from your question what it needs to run. So I have an example chat because when I tested it, Claude was very slow today as well. So just like Riverside in Twitter, I don't know, Claude was not working on demo day, but I've saved the chat here. And we'll explore exactly what happened during this chat. So what I asked Claude was to fetch the top 10 token holders for GRT on Arbitrum-1 and plot a pie chart of the data using D3GS. So I have to be a little bit specific by saying using D3GS because from what I've experienced with this particular client is that not all JavaScript libraries are available to plot data. And the D3GS was the most reliable that I found. And again, sorry, let me just take a quick water. So I also give it a little bit of context here, where I say, remember that in ClickHouse, database names are quoted using backticks. Because sometimes the LLM will, it doesn't figure out the right format. So I have to say it like use backticks for the quotes, and addresses should also be in lower cases. So that's what you will find when you make the queries. You'll find some prompts to work better than others. And here's what Claude said to me. It'll fetch the top 10 token, and this is the plan it created. So it started to explore the available databases. So this is what the tool is calling. So it's using the tool we provide, these databases. And it says, great, I can see Arbitrum-1 is out. I can see Arbitrum-1 version 1.9.0 is available. So it will list the tables from that particular database. And it needs to find the GRT token contract address. Because I didn't provide the address in my prompt, in my query, I just said GRT. But as you know, or maybe you don't, but you should be aware of, ERC20 tokens can have the same symbol. They're really identified by the addresses. Like you can have multiple contract addresses that use GRT as their symbol, but how do you figure out which one is the real GRT, right? And Claude is actually smart enough to figure this out on his own. So it says that I can see several tokens with symbol GRT on Arbitrum. Let's find the official the graph token by looking at the most active one in terms of balances. So it made a query here that will tell him like how much activity there is in between the GRT in between all the GRT token to find the right one. So it went through a little bit of on an iteration through that query, And you can see that it said, now I can see that the official GRT is likely this address, which is the correct one, as it has the highest number of orders. So then it continued with the original idea of fetching the top 10 token orders for that contract. And since I asked it to draw a chart, it drew me an interactive D3GS pie chart. I asked him to update the color schema because the color scheme was a little bit not ideal, not visible. And so this is like the end result that I get from my query. And I just can have a look at the top 10 holders with the address, the balance, and the percentage based on the total supply shown here. And if you want to double check that it's kind of accurate, you could look at some other sources. I've checked, with Etherscan, and the top token holders is totally accurate. So ERC20 token data is going to be very accurate. As I've said, it's only the prices that may look a bit off sometimes if the pair you're looking for doesn't have enough volume. But this is a good example of how you can, like, this query run in about a minute or something, and it was because Claude was slow today, so it took like a bit of time to write all the code, and because this is what the LLM outputs, it outputs all the code, it has to write all that, so it takes a little bit of time. But you can quickly get like visualizations and information just by using an LLM and just querying some stuff. So one of the advantages of having an MCP as well is that you can attach things that the MCP provides. So you can see here, there's this button that says attach from MCP. And what attach from MCP does is that we provide the same SQL query that the API is running. You can also use them into in your LLM. So for example, this is the SQL that the balances account is running. And you can use SQL EVM balance for account, or you can use tokens for contract. So again, as we are, MCP is like a very recent development as well. So for us as MCP server developers, we're also learning on how to make best use of those features. So also based on your feedback, if you have like if you have any feedback on using LLMs that way, we can integrate a lot more stuff on our side, on the MCP server side, to provide to everyone. So if somebody in the community finds a cool query that they have, we could integrate it into the MCP server, and every MCP client can have access to the same query. So I think that's a really interesting way, like a really, it makes sharing, knowledge between everybody very easy. We just add stuff to the server and every client benefit from it. So this is sent as an attachment to the query. You see as a TXT file. And if I type a query and I ask him, hey, can you use that query to create the balances for Vitalik's address, it will use that query. So I'm not sure. I'll try to make it work, but I'll see if it's not too slow today or if it's working at all, because I might have some limitations. So I'll say use the following, use the attached query to get the balances for Vitalik's account on Ethereum. I'll just say that. And I'm out of free messages apparently. So that's sad. So yeah, the free version, I think, of Claude Desktop is a bit limiting. But if you have any other LLM clients, you could make that query as well. If you have Klein, we have Cursor as well that uses MCP, and I think a lot more MCP clients are available as well. So not only Claude Desktop. So I'm going to go back to the presentation here. Yeah, we have documentation for those. If you use a different one, feel free also to give us some feedback and we can add it to the docs as well. And what I want to finish on is about our process and kind of our vision of how we're building this token API. So we're committed to provide all the information regarding our data sourcing and validation process to the community. So what that means is that when you look at certain providers today, like for example, CoinGecko or Kraken or some other, token information providers, you might not find all the information you need about how are they sourcing their data, how are they validating the data, where does it come from. You don't have direct access to the databases most of the time. So that's what we want to give here is a little bit of a different approach. And I think it's really aligned also with the Graph's idea of, decentralized access to knowledge. Is we're fully transparent and you can see the exact data that we provide for the API is the same you get access to through the LLM. We source everything from on-chain, and especially for prices. We're not going to source from centralized exchanges data or partnerships. And we have a fully transparent data pipeline. Like everything is open source in the pipeline, from substreams to ClickHouse to the API. Everything is open source, so you can really even build a stack yourself and play with it if you want. You should have instructions on the repos to do that. So what's next for Token API? We can add more chains. So we're aiming to, we can look at adding more EVM chains since we already have support for it. We're also looking into the next, for the next iterations to add Solana and SVM-based chains to the Token API. More DEX protocol supports. So Uniswap v3, v4 is coming next. And we can look at adding more like Curve and other like DXDY, other DEXs as well for the prices. We want also maybe to have an endpoint that allows you to query pool data directly. So you can, if you have a pair address, you could query the pool and get all the information you need from that. And as I've said repeatedly, I think through the presentation, is that improvements, new features, and like the focus of our efforts will be based on your feedback. So how do you get started with the Token API? You can go to the graph.com/docs and go to the Token API. You can also scan this QR code. And I'll just quickly show something about the authorization. You need an authorization token to make queries to the REST API endpoints. And the graph, the docs will redirect you to the graph.market to get that token. So all you need to do at this point is sign up. And I'll do it with you guys because I don't think I had an account here. So I signed in with my Google account. And here you can see it says I have an API key, but I don't want the API key. I want the GWT token. And this is found here in the 3 dots. You need to generate an access token. And that's the token you want to use for your API queries, not the API key, but the GWT that is generated from the API key. Hopefully that's clear enough. And that's also the token you're going to use for the configuration from the MCP. So I'm going to show that as well. How do you get started with the AI MCP? If you already are a power user of your LLM client of choice, maybe you already know that, but in any case, you need to go to, you can go to our NPM package, MCP, at pinax/MCP, and you'll find instructions there. I'll just quickly show how it looks like for Cloud Desktop here. So this is what the config looks like. You have a Cloud Desktop config.json that you have to put, depending on which operating system you use, you have to put it into different places. You can see it's all documented on the graph.com and on the NPM package as well. But you'll find that you need your access token here as well. And for the SSO URL, you want to put tokenapi.thegraph.com/SSE. This is the endpoint that the MCP is going to use to communicate between the LLM and the API. And that's all there is to it. For your configuration, you restart your client and it should pick it up. And yeah, so to summarize which chains are available right now, as I said, it's Arbitrum 1, Base, BSC, Ethereum, Polygon, and Optimism. which data is available, ERC20 tokens for now. We have balances, current balances, historical transfers up to 180 days, token holders, contract metadata, prices, and open high, low, and close data for Uniswap v2. Only as we add more dexes in the next iterations. So thank you guys for attending, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them.
Awesome. Awesome, Etienne. Yeah, really clear presentation. Thank you so much. Seeing this as another tool in the Web3 ecosystem just makes sense. And I'm really happy that this is out there and we're pushing on this as a entire, the graph, ecosystem, which is really good. There are a few questions. What's your favorite LLM currently? Maybe based on results or anything that you feel like sharing, such as like speed, potential feature updates, etc.
Well, I haven't played with a lot of different ones. I've played around with Claude, both the Sonnet version and the Haiku version. Sonnet is very good, for better than Haiku for figuring out stuff on its own. Haiku needs a little bit more directions. But I think you can also use any other model like DeepSeek is okay. What would be interesting actually is if the community, if anybody in the community is interested in that, is trying to use an LLM that was kind of trained to be like a data analyst. I know there's like some LLMs that have been trained for more specific purposes. And that would be interesting as I think to find an LLM that was kind of tuned to work with SQL. I think it would work very, very well in this environment here.
Yeah. I just 2 or 3 days ago, I tried Gemini 2.5. Really good. Really, really good.
So,
yeah, that one's impressive for me. Another question. What's the best way to structure the data for use? Directly in Claude or whatever LLM, or out from the source and back in substreams?
Can you repeat the question? The question is about the format.
What is the best way to structure the data for use? Directly in Claude or whatever LLM, or out from the source and back in substreams, or is that done directly, automatically in the MCP?
Yeah, so the MCP, if you use the MCP, what you will get is the result of a SQL query. So you can ask the LLM to format it into a certain way afterwards, I would say. Like, you don't have to worry when you use the MCP, you don't really have to worry about the SQL much or the format much because you can just ask the LLM to do it. So for example, in here, when I pull up my chat again, if I look at the actual result from the query here, you see it's formatted like in a JSON format. But the LLM can automatically take that and reformat it into whatever you need. So if you ask for CSV in your prompt, it will take that and put it as CSV, or whatever you want. If you use the LLM, you can ask for whatever you want. The LLM will make the conversions for you. If you're using the REST API endpoints, you will get JSON. And then it's up to your app, like as you're developing an app that's using it, it's up to your app to kind of transform that data.
Got it. All right. Well, Etienne, thank you so much for this presentation. For chat who has hopped in for this presentation on Token API, feel free to get going with Token API. It is functional and working and in beta and needs builders to get out there and get using it. And if there's any feedback, Etienne, what would be best for feedback for you? Would that be reaching out to you in a certain way? And developers out there, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to filter the feedback to Etienne. What would you prefer?
Yeah, as you want, like maybe put your feedback to Marcus,
sure,
and he can feed it to me.
Perfect. Yes. Developers out there, get your feedback to me. You can find me on Twitter, and my DMs are always open. And from there, I will get that feedback to Etienne and the Pinax team. So thank you so much for your time, Etienne. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm really happy for developers out there to get using this. I used this just the other day, and I saw the use right away. I saw how dashboards were easily able to be populated with information that subgraphs either have difficulty getting or just don't have. And this is something that is a new feature set that really can extend a dApp's power quickly. So really great work from you and your team. Oh, we got one more question here in chat. Just to finish,
Sure.
I've been playing with the MCP just now, and it doesn't look like there's any caps or maximum. I feel like I'm totally unleashed. Is this normal? No limit on data, and for free?
Yeah, exactly. So that's also something you might want to be aware of. The limit will be basically the number of tokens your LLM is allowing you in your chat window.
Mm-hmm.
So the limit is going to be also if you have a paid plan and you pay per token, be careful if you ask for like too much data in the response, especially if you need to like visualize it,
Sure.
because it will consume a lot of tokens. So be aware of that.
That's something I've noticed recently using more powerful models in that it is hitting my, let's just say cursors getting paid, or these LLMs are getting paid recently
Yeah.
more than ever. And let's see. Oh, this is a great question. Have you noticed any weird things happening dealing with AI, like hallucinations? Because it's based on blockchain data, are hallucinations kept to a minimal? How is that happening? Yeah, we are trying to have verifiability and at the same time AI, and that sometimes can be difficult. What are you noticing?
So making sure the AI doesn't hallucinate results. Yeah, I think using the MCP is actually, it's not a foolproof way, but the AI does really takes what the MCP returns. Like the AI uses an MCP as just request response, and the response it gets, it will not hallucinate, numbers for you. It will take what the response has. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a nice way to like control a bit on the hallucinations, because if the AI doesn't use an MCP, it doesn't use tools, so it will just try to figure out like from what it knows in its training data. It will
Mm-hmm.
hallucinate a price, it will hallucinate a transfer, it will hallucinate anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's using an MCP, it's really taking the data in the response as the
Mm-hmm.
source of truth. So what I've seen is that there's no really any hallucination when using the MCP tools.
Nice.
It's when you don't have them that I think it can create data from thin air. But we provide the data, so it uses that.
Nice. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, MCPs, I was using it the other day too for the first time using Token API, and I didn't quite understand it at first. I thought it was providing live data directly into my environment, and I said, that's interesting. And then I said, wait, no, no, this is live data right into Cursor. And that was really, really a wonderful experience for my first time with MCPs, which I see this standard being quite powerful moving forward for
Yeah,
different uh, products and different technologies to integrate in directly into the LLM experience, which is really cool. So,
yeah, it's getting more and more adoption. There
yeah,
was an announcement a few days ago that OpenAI was going to start supporting it as well.
yep,
They used their own proprietary version
hmm,
before, like for ChatGPT, they had plugins.
yep,
Now they're going to use also these MCPs. So
that makes sense.
you're going to have support coming across like all your LLM tools. So
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
very cool. Standardization. Etienne, thank you so much. Great presentation. Chat is really enjoying it. They liked what you had to share. And with that being said, thank you for joining us, everyone, on this special episode of Graph Builders Office Hours. And we will be with you tomorrow for a regularly scheduled episode with Yaniv Tal going over the GRC20 hackathon and his learnings on that. So take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your day and keep on building. Take care.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
All right. So let's go ahead and let